Now I'm going to talk to you about what is great tribulation, what is Jacob's trouble, and why this matters to you and I in this hour. And as we discuss this, I just want to remind us that the goal is not to increase immediacy, but the goal is to start urgency. There's a difference. Immediacy is someone going, okay, if this is happening, I need to quit my job, stockpile food, get machine guns, and hide in a cave. That is not the goal of this conversation. The goal is I need to start loving my brother at home better. Because if these realities are coming to Philippines, if I can't love my brother, how am I going to love these Jewish people? Am I making sense? So I'm wanting to intensify your commitment to your family, to your local church, because we got to get rid of all the little offense in our hearts right now. Because otherwise, we will never be ready. Just knowing this fact is not going to get us ready. I want my heart to overcome every little mistreatment that I have received, whether from a leader, from person underneath. So I want us to understand that my aim is to intensify urgency to posture our heart to love, not to stir up immediacy. Like, I gotta better know this and not have a job, not have babies. Somebody did say that to me. It's like, am I supposed to have baby? I said, have a lot of babies. But maybe not when Antichrist shows up. I mean, because Jesus says, woe to the pregnant woman. So I'm like, when you know the history is 3.5 years left, maybe that's not the best time to be pregnant, okay? So this is common sense. But until then, please don't look far. Like, look one another and married and have kids, okay? So I hope God opens your eyes in this room, okay? I am on the... Don't look far, friends. I'm breaking off the spirit of blindness off of you. The message of Jacob's trouble is going to intensify your longing. Okay, now what is Jacob's trouble and what is the great tribulation? The word Jacob's trouble, like I explained, it comes from the passage Jeremiah 30, but the concept reappears multiple times. The concept is tribulation, like you can't compare with anything from history. No tribulation that can't be compared to anything in the future. So that's what I mean by unprecedented and unequaled. That's key. The reason why that's so significant is because a lot of scholars will argue, no, this is talking about the past, Babylonian captivity. Actually, Holocaust was worse than Babylon. Holocaust was way worse than 70 AD. So we need to really take Jesus' words not as an exaggeration, but really with real accuracy. So let's pay attention to Jesus' words in Matthew 24. I want to only read this phrase. Matthew 24, verse 21 through 22. Jesus says, there will be great tribulation. And just in case we have our definition of what that is, he goes on and says, such as has not been from the beginning of the world. Meaning, you can't even compare this with Noah's flood. This will be way worse than Sodom and Gomorrah. And he goes on and says, no, and never will be. Meaning, after this tribulation, there can't be another more worse calamity. So everything you want to compare with, imagine there's coming a time of the darkest hour of human history. But he goes on and says, but fear not. Why? Because he not only has overcome the world, he has given us the Holy Spirit that he has given us to the world as a light. So in the hour that is the darkest, our goal, it says in Isaiah 60, when the deep darkness covers the earth, the glory of the Lord shall be upon you. Like, the light will be brighter in our heart. For who? People who have understanding. It's the people who have thought through this stuff and wrestled. It's those people who will act and shine. You have to, in any, think about it, like you go into a boxing match. If you have never thought about what to face, and you walk up and somebody says, you're about to have a boxing match today with Mike Tyson. You're gonna faint in fear before the punch comes at you. Am I making sense? It's like when you know you're about to face Mike Tyson, you probably really want to have a fight with James Lee and get yourself trained up. Because if you can't beat James, you're not gonna face Mike Tyson. Am I making sense? So thoughtlessness is what we are warring against. It's just like, I'm just gonna live life and just love Jesus. There is no such thing. The reason Jesus repeated so many Bible verses is because He cares about us thinking about these things. And this is why it says in Isaiah 33, wisdom and understanding will be the stability of your times. It will be stability to your feet. So Jesus says, here it is, there will be no tribulation like this, never will be. In verse 22, and if those days had not been cut short, no human being would be saved. And what he's referring to is the intensity of this tribulation will be so intense. Here it says human race. On other translations it will say the flesh. I believe what he's talking about here, not necessarily human race. The reason is when you get to the Battle of Armageddon, when you get to Revelation, you see a lot of humans still. What he's talking about this tribulation is there will be no Jewish race left. You know this because Jesus is actually quoting two prophets, Moses and Isaiah. In Deuteronomy 4, Moses for the first time uses this phrase, few men are left on the earth, when he's describing the concept of tribulation. The word tribulation first appears in Deuteronomy 4 verse 30. I don't have it here. But think about it. It says, when you are in tribulation, and he goes on and says, in the latter days. So Moses first introduces this idea, there's end times, tribulation, and few men will be left. What do you mean by few men? I will expound on that with Zechariah. But Isaiah goes on. How many of you love Isaiah 24? Isaiah 24. No one? Okay. Okay. No one loves Isaiah 24. Okay. I hope you love Isaiah 24. Get to know Isaiah 24. Isaiah 24 talks about the destiny of the islands and Asia, right? From the west they shout majesty of the Lord, and they sing glory to the righteous one from the ends of the earth. Friends, if there's any Bible verse about Philippines' destiny, Isaiah 24, okay? Okay. I was just making sure. I was a little bit shocked. No one knows Isaiah 24. What has James been doing here? But Isaiah 24, but you know what people don't actually think about when they quote that passage? It's actually in context of great tribulation. So Isaiah 24, specifically in Jacob's trouble. In Isaiah 24, the context is, verse 2, priests and the lay people, servants and masters, buyers and sellers, none will be spared. Meaning no one escapes this. Like it goes on farther in Revelation 6, whether you're a king or a slave, politician or not, poor or rich, money will not save you in that day. It goes on farther in Amos, the Lord warns us, when they will even hide in the grave, He will open up the grave and take out, and the calamity will chase after them. And it goes further in Revelation 9. It says, in that day, they will seek death, and death will flee from them. I mean, this is so terrifying. This is why all prophets who have considered this, they come to the same conclusion. Who will stand in the day of the Lord? So in that context, Isaiah goes on and says in verse 6, a curse devours the earth, and the inhabitants suffer their guilt. And then he concludes, and few men are left. It will be so intense that Zechariah takes it specifically and expounds, what does it mean that few men will be left? And he explains in Zechariah 13 and 14, he says 2/3 of Israel and perish, and 1/3 shall be left alive. Behold, a day is coming, for I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses plundered, and the women raped. Half of the city shall go into exile. Now let's pause. The last 12 months, all of us have been devastated because more than 200 people were taken into Gaza. I just need you to think about this. More than half of Jerusalem will be taken into prison camp. 2/3 of the entire Jewish population will be cut. We have no idea what's coming. We have no idea. The entire earth, and you might say, oh, Elijah, that's devastating, but isn't that applied to Middle East? No. The Lord reminds through the prophets, they will be taken into captive to 4 corners of the earth. East, west, north, and south. Just like during World War II, when Hitler began to expand his empire, no European country wanted to stand and accept Israel. And what I heard, which comforted me, was that the president of Philippines opened the door of the island of Philippines to accept the Jewish survivors. I mean, this is what's happening. If you would accept Jews, then we will attack your nation. You see what's happening? And not only that, not only will it be a national crisis of a national war, it will come down to your economic crisis. In Revelation 13, when beast comes, he establishes a new system known as the mark of the beast. But before that happens, you know what the Antichrist does? In Revelation 17, it talks about the destruction of the harlot Babylon. Do you know who destroys harlot Babylon? Antichrist. Isn't that interesting? Antichrist kills harlot Babylon. What is harlot Babylon? It's basically economic system. It's a city. It's described as a city that is like the center of the entire world commerce. If this city goes down, the world economy goes down. Think of it like New York. If the Wall Street New York goes down, guess what? The global economy collapses, right? So think of harlot Babylon not just as a religious system, but economic system that the religion is tied to, okay? It's primarily about money, not about whether you worship Buddha or not. It's about, can you pay the bills and provide food on your table or not? That's why everybody will have to sign up for this, or you can't make a transaction with your credit card. But guess what the Antichrist does? First thing, he shows up and he just shoots a nuclear weapon on this city, destroys it. Why? So that he now has the key to the global finance. But guess what he's going to do? Until you get the mark of the beast, which requires you to kill the Jews. That's what Hitler did. Hitler didn't give you an option to buy or sell unless you hand over the Jews in your house. If you accept the Jews, then we go come after you. This is why I'm saying this is not just going to be a national issue, but the personal issue. It's going to come down to every family. That's why I said that the valley of decision is not a theological matter. It's about whether can we do transaction at grocery store. Now, at the same time, I don't want to put too much fear, because in a time like that, when Pharaoh wants to persecute Israel, God provides protection in Goshen. I am believing God's going to raise up Josephs in the time of famine with divine supernatural business ideas to provide the grain in the times of the worst famine. I believe there's coming a time of a global Elijah movement where just birds will come and drop supernatural food. I mean, if God can provide manna to millions of people in the wilderness, He's asking us to the end time church, has my arm been shortened? Have you not read that I caused the rock to gush out river of life? Like, I can produce supernatural provision, trust me. Follow the Lamb. But at the same time, there will be pressure. Am I making sense? So we're not talking about theological matter right now. We're talking reality that will soon shape what happened in Netherlands, what happened in Germany and Austria. If you don't hand over the Jews nearby in your neighborhood, your business will burn down to the ashes. And that's what happened to Corrie ten Boom. Her watchmaking shop was burned to the ashes because she hated the Jewish people. And this is why the Lord warns the nations to pay attention to this storyline. This is not just somebody else's matter somewhere in Iran, Afghanistan. Too bad they have to deal with this. No, it will come to the every island of Philippines. The valley of decision, we have to make the decision now, because that's what Esther thought. I don't live there. I'm not in the Jewish ghetto. I live in a palace. I live in America. Koreans don't ever have to deal with Muslims versus Jews. I don't think so. It will come to Kansas City. It will come to Seoul. And the destiny, whether your nation's economy will go up or down. Here's the thing. In that day, Jesus encourages those who see the abomination of desolation. This event happens in Judea. That's why he tells them, go, when you see it, now flee. But when the Jewish people flee, the surrounding nations are what? Islamic countries. There's no way to flee. This is why the prophets talk and condemn the surrounding nations who will be prepared to fulfill the ancient vengeance and revenge of Esau. In Obadiah specifically, it's talking to Esau, modern day Jordan, but it will not be limited to Jordan. It will be applied to all the Islamic countries and beyond. Obadiah chapter 1, verse 10 through 14. Here it is. For violence against your brother Jacob, that you shall be cut off forever. But you should not have gazed on the day of your brother. See how he calls it the day of your brother? The day of Jacob's trouble? In that day of his captivity, you should not have stood at the crossroads. Meaning, there will be this Islamic, dark, satanic force, not just Hamas or Hezbollah. I'm talking the entire Antichrist beast army waiting at the crossroads when the Jewish people will flee from Jerusalem city. Because there's not many places to go. There's only few routes they can flee. And when the Antichrist takes off the mask, starts the global persecution, and the mass number of the Jewish people are fleeing, seeking for refuge, these dark satanic army will be preparing in the way to slaughter them and to taking them into captivity. That's the context. You understand that? And the Lord's condemning that. Verse 14, you should not have stood at the crossroads to cut off those among them who escape, nor should you have delivered up those among them who remain in the day of distress. So much so that prophets describe right before Jesus comes back, time and time and time again. I can't show you all the Bible verses, but it repeatedly describes the remnant of Israel hidden in prisons, plundered, trapped in caves. Like passages like Isaiah 42, but also a passage so well known for us that we think it's all symbolic. Isaiah 61. The anointing of the Lord is upon me to open what? Prison doors. Okay? Jesus did quote that in Luke chapter 4 and said, in your hearing, this has been fulfilled, but he didn't say the rest of the prophecy has no implication. The reason you know that is after he quoted the year of the Lord's favor, he didn't quote the day of vengeance. He just paused, which means the second coming of Jesus is the anointing to literally open prison doors in a physical sense. The situation which tells us there is coming worse Auschwitz death camp around the globe. Now, this is a terrifying idea. This is why I said this is the worst message that I can think of. I don't like talking about this. But why? You might ask, Elijah, then why are you talking about it? Why is this significant? It's because, think about it, I have spent quite some time to try to understand what happened at the Holocaust. Because the reason I had to study this is because we tend to think ordinary people can commit evil things. It's only demonized people who do such murderous things. Problem with such logic is that Germans were a very civilized nation. Germany was a first world country. Germany was a Christian nation. Germany had one of the best scientists, philosophers, historians. Not only that, people in the battalion who, there were so many ways that Nazi wanted to get rid of all the Jewish people. But you realize the number of the people they wanted to murder could not be handled by the number of bullets. That's why, as horrific as this idea is, the reason they built a gas chamber factory, they built a death factory. The train goes in just to burn people alive, okay? This really happened, friends. Historians trying to remove this from, you go to Auschwitz today, it still exists. There are still evidences. People in that generation did not believe this, okay? But what I'm saying is, this is only 70 years ago. And what we gotta remember is Germans were not barbarians. They didn't lack education. In America, so many people talk about social reform and they say, well, black people always have this problem because they're not educated. You think education is a solution to human evilness? Now, there is a place for education. I'm not neglecting education, but it was all the professors who had a machine gun in their hand and looked at women, young teenagers, and shot them 100 person at a time. Think about it. This battalion, they had to murder people at a gunpoint shot, 100 to 300 a day. How could this possibly happen? And there were so many documentaries trying to explain this. And in one documentary, they describe, this is how they say, it talks about many people, these Holocaust, this murder, mass murder, were inherently evil. And the actions are beyond the capacity of ordinary people. However, what's disturbing is that all of these atrocities were committed not radical terrorists, not willing executioners, not seasoned killers, but ordinary civilians. When the historians actually did research, they discovered people who killed more people than others were taxi drivers, plumbers, bankers, professors, and musicians and doctors. These individuals, not willing executioners, but they were ordinary, normal people. Chillingly normal. Too ordinary. To a point, a reporter named Hannah Arendt, when she went to the trial of Adolf Eichmann. Adolf Eichmann is one of the strategists for gas chamber. And they put him on trial. And she was sent as a Jewish woman to do a report on who this monstrous man was. And she, after days of his trial, you know what she discovered? She portrays him as terribly and terrifyingly normal. And she goes on to say, what made him to do such murderous actions was a failure to think deeply about his actions. And she concludes by saying banality of evil, meaning the sad truth is that most evil is done by the people who never make up their minds to whether do good or evil. Meaning they understood that it wasn't just demonized people, it was ordinary people who never thought about it. And then the moment of decision, a valley of decision came, and majority of them just decided to shoot the babies and just murder them. Just don't think about it. It's the thoughtlessness. I don't have to know this subject. Why is this subject important? It's the thoughtlessness that you haven't thought through, and the valley of decision comes, and you make the choice that you never imagined that you would have committed. The idea that I am exempt from such murder and Adolf Eichmann is just demonized by Satan is a false notion. The reason the Lord, in His kindness but severity, warns the nations is this valley of decision is coming. And Scripture tells us, would you stand with Jesus as a friends of the bridegroom? Even unto them taking our possession, even unto them threatening our family members, even unto them coming and threatening our belongings. The point of it is, here's, friends, what I'm inviting you into. I'm not saying this to you as a person who's already got the right answers. I'm not a person who's already done persecution. I'm not saying this as a person who knows exactly how I'm going to play out. But I am inviting you as a person who's trembling at these realities and desperately asking God, help me by your grace, that you will release courage in that hour, that you will release clarity in that hour, that I will make my allegiance with Jesus in red, even unto death. Help me, God. Friends, you can't prepare for persecution. Nobody can prepare. How am I going to endure suffering? You know what you can do? Prepare the oil in your heart. Grow in intimacy in the revelation of God. Put your mind on the leadership of God. And the end of this story will not end with Antichrist prevailing, but Jesus Christ sitting on the throne of Jerusalem. When the end is clear, every woman, think about it. There's no woman in this room who's like, I am ready to have a contraction. I am strong. No one's ready for that. But guess what? Every mother is a courageous woman. Somehow, every mother has a strength for that pain. You ask them how. You know how? They've heard the sound of the heartbeat of that baby. They've seen the ultrasound of that baby. That baby is not abstract to that mother. The question is, have you heard the sound of eternity? Question is, have you seen the ultrasound of the second coming? Because when you see the coming of the Lord, then you have a strength to endure the pain of contraction. Why? You know what this is unto. If every mother can endure the pain of contraction, I believe the grace of God is enough and sufficient for every weak and broken person to overcome the threat of persecution. Friends, the invitation is, would you stand in the counsel of the Lord? Invitation is, would you prioritize your time in your schedule to meditate on the leadership of God? These realities and the valley of decision is coming. However, if we choose to not think or not speak, in the time of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Church of Germany thought he was not measured. He was too radical, too fanatical. And during that time, it said that silence in the face of evil is in itself evil. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. God will not hold us guiltless. If you, after hearing this reality, choose not to go in the understanding of these realities, that is for you to choose not to understand. To not act is to act. To not speak is to speak. And the Lord will not hold us guiltless. And that's why the Lord invites us in His kindness. Consider the severity and the kindness of the Lord. Friends, my prayer and my hope is that God will fan the flame of the courage of the Church of Philippines. That God will fan the flame of the understanding over this nation. That God will raise up friends of the bridegroom in the hour, just like when Haman wanted to annihilate the whole generation of the Jewish people, that by the power and the grace and the love of Jesus out of your mouth that you will declare, if I perish, I perish, but I will stand with the apple of His eyes. Here's what I want to do. Just worship team, come up. We want to go into a time of prayer. We want to go into time of prayer. I've discussed with you that the goal of this message is not to, we have this end time great tribulation check. Like I heard this message. The goal is to bring us into a place of intercession. Jesus, I believe, invites us into the place of Gethsemane. And this morning, I had to kneel before the Lord of my own heart. Truth of the matter is, friends, is even as I'm talking about this truth, my heart, time to time, gets so dull. I have the accurate knowledge, but little tears. What I want to invite you into is, if you can't feel the gravity of this reality, where when Jesus was dropping the sweat of blood that caused Him to be concerned about the daughters of Jerusalem, and if you are falling asleep, too weighty, too complicated, then ask the Lord, Lord, break my heart with that which breaks your heart. Lord, I ask for the gift of tears. I ask for the sobriety of your heart and the kindness of your heart. Ask the Lord for help. Lord, come and break me with that which breaks your heart. I ask you, Lord, I want to be a friend. Just like that invitation in Isaiah 63. I was alone, treading on the winepress of the nations. No one stood with me. I want you to picture Jesus saying that in front of you. I stood alone. No one was there. And what would you answer to that? Jesus, I won't leave you alone. I will stand with Jesus in red. I will be a friend of the bridegroom all the way. Help me, God, to be faithful to the end.